So I'm super excited to talk to you about Six College's first ever global seminar, which we hope and plan to make a recurring summer opportunity. I will be leading it, so I wanted to introduce myself a little bit and talk about just very briefly sort of what I'm thinking, what we have planned so far. And then there'll be info sessions later in the fall that if you're interested, please attend those. You can watch out for the announcements. They'll come out through like Six News You Can Use, or which is the Six newsletter, or in your CAT classes. So I'm Dr. Bronstein. I'm an assistant teaching professor, and I'm the director of the Culture, Art, and Technology program and the experiential learning programs at Six. They've been here now, I think this is my 6th year. This is my family. I have 2 small kids. One is about to start kindergarten. The other is a few years out from that. I teach primarily in CAT. I also teach first-year seminars, and my background is really in literature and media studies, and I research television. I'm also a big walker, hiker, and outdoor person, so I love being in San Diego. I grew up in Oakland, went to college at UCLA, moved around a ton, and have traveled a decent amount. And so these courses in many ways are built around sort of some of the things I love, like thinking and reflecting on travel, but then also on movies and national cinema, and what does it even mean to have a national cinema. So that's a little bit about me. And why New Zealand? So I went to UCLA. Like I said, I did UC EAP, which is the study abroad program through the UC system. I went to University of East Anglia in Norwich for a year. It was an incredibly formative experience for me. I then went to graduate school, moved around, found myself in San Diego, and it has been a big goal of mine to lead a study abroad program because it was such an important experience for me. I had so much fun. I learned so much. And I think, it's just a really exciting opportunity. And so my background is actually originally in college in British literature, but then also, as I said, I study television, and I'm really interested in ideas of how place and home intersect around issues of race, gender, and colonization in media. And so in many ways, that's really the driving force, particularly of the literature class, but also of the 125 class, which is going to be more focused on travel narratives and how histories of power shape the stories we tell about travel, and also how we tell different kinds of stories about travel, sort of dependent on different kinds of bodies and national privilege. So New Zealand, just as like also why New Zealand, it's beautiful, and it's a huge hub of movie making, sort of dubbed perhaps problematically Bollywood, as you see in that bottom slide. But it's also a space of global, so it's a space of global cinema. You see a lot of like American productions come to New Zealand. So King Kong is a good example. The more recent King Kong is a good example of that. But New Zealand is also producing global filmmakers like Peter Jackson with Lord of the Rings, Taika Waititi, whose films we will watch. And so it's an exciting sort of space to think about those intersections of global and national cinema, and the ways in which those intersect with histories of colonization and race. So, broad overview. So the CAT 125 class will be about travel narratives and stories of movement and migration. So taking advantage of our location, we will have students sort of take excursions across Wellington and also across the Northern Island to think about relationships of power, histories of colonialism, and narratives of space, and how those impact how we, right, as a group, alongside other tourists, migrants, and refugees experience and move through the space of New Zealand. So the class would interrogate or will interrogate how our notions of travel are shaped by privilege, experience, and histories of a place. The other class is Literature 172 GS, which stands for Global Seminar, and it's really a national cinema and post-coloniality class. So we would make distinct use of the city of Wellington and its central position in the New Zealand film industry, and then plan to visit these sound archives and the New Zealand Film Commission, along with film studios and like other sort of spaces of the global cinema industry and the national cinema industry. And through watching movies, reading theoretical texts, and delving into the works of New Zealand filmmakers like Jane Campion, who did The Piano, and Taika Waititi, who did Hunt for the Wilderpeople, Boy. Most recently, he has a TV show on HBO that's hysterical about paranormal detectives in Wellington, actually. Studio tours and learning about archiving and the politics of archiving New Zealand's film history. This course is meant to explore film storytelling at the nexus of national identity, colonization, Indigenous filmmaking, activism, and globalization. So here's our tentative kind of weekly schedule. New Zealand will be our classroom. We'll spend time in Wellington specifically walking in parks, outside during class sessions, reflecting. Monday through Wednesday, you would spend your mornings with me in class and each other. And then your afternoons are yours. On Thursday, we would plan to do excursions. So this may mean taking a trip to the botanical gardens and the zoo, going to a museum, a weekend excursion potentially to somewhere like Cathedral Cove. And then you'll have long weekends for travel, exploring New Zealand, Wellington, whatever your heart desires. So here's our tentative list of excursions. These are sort of still in process, but I wanted to share them with you in case it was of interest. One of the things we'll focus on that I haven't mentioned is thinking about ecotourism and the politics of ecotourism. And what is that? How does that sort of work? What is the impact on the environment? Because we know that tourism especially things sort of under the rubric of ecotourism, which is environmental tourism, have this bigger impact on the environment, or bring people to these sort of spaces that are preserved. Here's sort of a set of things that I hope that we will be able to do or planning on. And then ultimately, please contact me if you have any questions. I'll be on campus in the fall, but always available. And the best way to reach me is email. And then we'll be doing these global seminar info sessions too, coming up this fall. And if you have any sort of more specific questions about finances or anything related to global seminars, please feel free to reach out to them. The staff is wonderful and so informed. Again, feel free to reach out to me, and